Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 6, Chapter 6, entitled The Escape. Izuku must have drifted off. As next he woke, it was to Recovery Girl shaking him awake, which caused him to back away before he was properly awake. She told him that it was time for dinner and handed him the meal. He gave a thanks before starting to eat it, looking up to see that the curtain around Aizawa's bed was open once again, and that present Mike was once more helping the other to eat. It was a minute before he realized that there was some music quietly playing, coming from where Mike-sensei sat. It wasn't something he heard before, but it was relaxing, just a gentle melody. He kind of wished it was a bit louder, though, so he could hear it better. But he wasn't going to ask the English teacher. Still, he found himself not quite so tense in the presence of the blonde teacher. He finished eating and found himself lying on the bed, bored. Recovery Girl came back out and unwrapped the bandages on his chest, and Izuku got the first glimpse of the creeping wound he had right above his heart. It was still fairly wounded. The nurse saw his confused look. The decay had started digging deeper and managed to eat away at the muscles and part of your rib cage that protected your heart. If the contact had been any longer, it may have managed to reach your heart, she informed him clinically. I already used a lot of your stamina to heal you, so you will have to let the rest of it heal naturally. Same with Aizawa over there. These types of wounds just require too much stamina to fully heal. Wouldn't stamina recover? Yes, but this type of stamina isn't something you can recover with a short nap. It's more akin to your life force, and my healing eats up part of it to speed up the natural healing process. With time, your life force can recover, but a bunch of injuries or a major injury will take out a huge chunk of your life force. When you get released, you cannot break any more of your bones. If you do, I won't be able to heal it, so be careful or you could lose the use of that limb. Izuku nodded, repeating the words in his head. Break a bone and lose that limb. She carefully disinfected the wound and wrapped his chest back up, removing the heart monitor as she did so before directing him to get some more sleep. Then she went over to Aizawa-sensei, unwrapping the bandages around his head after telling him to close his eyes. Izuku took in a sharp breath, seeing how black and purple the face was. It completely bruised, except one part underneath the eye that looked cut. Recovery Girl carefully wiped some disinfectant on the wounds and put on some clean bandages, also removing his heart monitor. Then she walked out of the room, towards her personal room. A beeping came from across the room, and Mike-sensei looked down at his phone, grumbling. Go do your show, Hisashi, Aizawa-sensei said. President Mike sighed. I'll be back tomorrow morning with breakfast for you and the little listener. Of course. I'll see you then. Mike-sensei started to walk out. Turning, he smiled at Aizawa. Love you, show. I love you too, you goof. Now get going. The English teacher chuckled and walked out. About 10 minutes passed before Aizawa sighed and spoke up. Can you put on Hisashi's radio show? Of course, Izuku replied, pulling out his phone and opening the radio app for President Mike's Put Your Hands Up station. Some music was playing, and after 30 minutes, when the clock hit 7 p.m., Mike-sensei's voice came on. What's up, listeners? How's everybody's day been doing? President Mike started cheerfully talking about different subjects. The hour passed and music started to play. Izuku left it on, though lowered the volume a bit so it wouldn't disturb Aizawa-sensei. Soon he ended up drifting off. Good morning. A loud voice woke him up with a start. Ugh, not so loud, Aizawa groaned. Izuku gave a groan of agreement, trying to fall back asleep, but he couldn't. He heard snickering. Ah, but I have coffee for you, Sho. Gimme, Aizawa muttered. Izuku sat up, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. He blinked and saw Mike holding the cup in straw in place as Aizawa sipped it. After a minute, Mike took the cup away. Let me give the little listener his breakfast, then you can have the rest of your beverage. Izuku watched silently as Mike-sensei pulled out a bento and paused, looking at him. Can I come closer? Yes. Mike-sensei walked closer and handed over the bento. If you want something to drink, let me know, and I'll get it for you, okay, kiddo? He hesitated. He looked at the water machine. The teacher saw the glance. You want me to get you some water? Izuku gave a nod. The English teacher filled up the plastic cup and brought it over. Izuku took it and drank it down, watching how President Mike returned to Aizawa and helped him drink some more and eat the food. Aizawa complaining about the lack of being able to use his hands. Aizawa had broken arms, and Izuku had one broken leg, though one had apparently mostly healed, having not been as broken. Though as he looked around he spotted a pair of crutches nearby. He went to check his phone, but saw it was dead. What time is it? 6:57, Mike-sensei answered, which meant classes would be starting in about another hour and a half. Izuku went back to eating the food. He watched as Mike-sensei finished helping Aizawa eat, and the man got up. Now, I expect you to stay here and rest. Don't try to go to your classes, understand? Perfectly, Aizawa responded. Izuku saw that Mike-sensei narrowed his eyes. Midoriya, make sure my husband doesn't do anything stupid, yeah? He nodded in response, and the teacher seemed satisfied as he left the room. Izuku and Aizawa looked at each other, and Izuku pointed to the crutches he had spotted. Aizawa snorted and gave a nod. The door opened and Mike-sensei popped back in. Almost forgot my phone. More like you wanted an excuse to make sure I wasn't immediately trying to leave, Aizawa commented. That too, Mike-sensei said, coming to a stop next to Aizawa, as he grabbed his phone. Then he leaned down and kissed Aizawa-sensei's bandaged forehead. Take care of yourself. Izuku glanced away, feeling like he was intruding upon something private. And then Present Mike walked out again. Aizawa shifted, and the two met eyes. Both waited silently for a few minutes to see if Mike would come back in. Aizawa slowly sat up. He made it to his feet and leaned against the bed for a minute before taking his first step. Izuku sat up, watching as Aizawa slowly went to the crutches. The teacher carefully maneuvered them to hang on one of his casts before he hobbled back. Izuku grabbed them and carefully stood up, figuring out how to use them. Shall we make our escape then, Sensei? Izuku questioned with a grin. Aizawa gave a snort and a nod. They got to the door and Aizawa paused. Peek your head out. Hizashi might be waiting outside. Izuku nodded, opening the door a crack and looking out. It's clear, he said quietly. Good. Let's go. The two started to make their way through the hall, having to pause frequently for them to catch their breaths. What do you think you two are doing? The displeased voice of Recovery Girl came from behind them. Damn, Aizawa muttered quietly. They both turned around to see the nurse glaring at them. Back to the hospital wing, you two. Izuku dejectedly started to walk back, Aizawa next to him. They sat down on the beds, and Recovery Girl remained in the room for another hour before her office phone rang. You both stay right here, or else, she stated, leaving the room and the door swung shut behind her. Both of the patients immediately started moving again. Izuku grabbed the crutches that had been left next to his bed instead of moved farther away. Aizawa went to the door, managing to open it. Izuku followed right behind him as the two moved as quickly as they could. This time, making progress more quickly as both wanted to be in the class before Recovery Girl's call was done. Izuku looked around the corner and saw Mike-sensei in the distance. Hide, he hissed, and the two ducked into the nearest classroom. Izuku watched the window of the door, and after a minute, saw Present Mike walk past. Good job, Aizawa told him, nodding his head once. Izuku grinned, a light, warm feeling spreading through his chest. They walked a minute before the two exited the empty classroom and continued through the hallways, though their progress became slow when the students started coming in. After a bit, the students stopped coming in so much, and it was time for the classes to start. And Izuku and Aizawa had made it to the door. Izuku opened it, holding it open for Aizawa, who walked in. Morning, Aizawa greeted. You're back already, Sensei. Izuku came in, letting the door close behind him. Midoriya, you're here as well. Are you two okay to be here? Izuku hobbled his way over to his seat, which was now far away from Bakugo, which was good because he was sure the blonde would have tripped him. My welfare isn't important, because your fight is far from over. More villains, Mineta exclaimed in a frantic tone. UA's sports festival is fast approaching, Aizawa told them. That's so ordinary, Kaminari exclaimed. Come on, we just had that villain attack. You sure about this? It's necessary, to demonstrate that UA's crisis management protocols are sound. That's the thinking, apparently. Compared to past years, there will be 5 times the police presence. Anyhow, our sports festival is the greatest opportunity you'll get. Izuku heard Mineta complain about it, wondering why it just couldn't be cancelled. Our sports festival is one of Japan's biggest events. The Olympics were once the world's sports festival. The whole country would be whipped into a frenzy over them. But as you know, that tradition has shrunk in scale to a shell of its former self after quirks developed. And as far as Japan's concerned, what's taken the place of the Olympics is the UA Sports Festival. The nation's top heroes will all be watching, right? Yaoyorozu questioned. They'll be there as scouts. They'll be looking to hire us as sidekicks after we graduate, That's how upcoming heroes gain the reputation enough to go solo. And a lot of those sidekicks never manage to go solo. They're sidekicks forever. That'll be you, Kaminari, you dunce, Jiro stated. That's so mean, Kaminari responded. Naturally, you'll gain valuable experience and popularity if you're picked by a big-name hero, but your time is limited. Show the pros what you're made of here, and you'll make futures for yourselves. This happens once a year, so you've got 3 chances. If you're hoping to become a hero, this is an event you can't miss. With that, the bell rang for homeroom to be over, and the door opened, letting Mike-sensei in. Izuku saw the man narrow his eyes from behind his glasses, and Aizawa walked past, pausing slightly as he passed Mike-sensei, and he saw the English teacher's lips moving, though whatever was being said was too quiet. The quick interaction passed, and Aizawa-sensei left. Mike-sensei took up the podium and looked at all of them, his gaze pausing on him, and Izuku saw the man's eyes closed for a moment, and he shook his head before he continued, the whole thing unnoticed by the other students as he spoke, going over the English lesson. The class ended and Mike-sensei started to head out, but paused, looking at him, green eyes peeking above his sunglasses. Midoriya, after lunch, returned to the nurse's office. He nodded in response, sinking down into his seat as the students looked at him. Midoriya, did you sneak out of the nurse's office? Ida questioned. So manly, Kirishima said, giving him a grin. I think he was more hobbling than sneaking out. One of the other students commented, a guy who shot tape from his elbows, if Izuku remembered correctly. Ectoplasm came in next, and the next few periods passed quickly. After Cementos' literature class, they went off to lunch. Ida and Uraraka walked beside him, despite his slow pace. They entered the lunchroom, and they told him to sit and that they would bring lunch to him. A few minutes later, they came back with 3 trays. He ate, listening as Uraraka and Ida discussed her reasons for becoming a hero. Lunch ended, and he started to hobble his way towards the nurse's wing, telling Uraraka and Ida that he could manage it on his own. It took him about 10 minutes, but he made it and entered the room, seeing Mike-sensei standing above Aizawa's bed. The teacher was already on it, and seemed to be getting lectured by the English teacher. Are you even listening to me, Sho? Mike-sensei asked. I am. Then why did you feel the need to leave after I asked you to stay and rest? Izuku listened to the conversation as he made his way to the bed, wincing as he hit his injured leg when he pushed himself onto the bed. I needed to tell my class about the sports festival. You could have done that Monday, Mike-sensei huffed. Why are you so stubborn? Because if I wasn't stubborn, then I would likely be dead, Aizawa replied, rolling his eyes, the only visible part of his face. The English teacher groaned, going quiet for a moment as he pinched his nose before removing his glasses and turning towards him. And what's your reason for leaving, Midoriya? He didn't want to be alone. Aizawa-sensei felt safe. He wanted to make sure his classmates were all right. He didn't like being in the nurse's office, didn't like the silence or how empty it felt. He said none of this. Instead, he just shrugged, knowing he wouldn't be able to say any of that. Mike-sensei looked him in the eyes and maybe found an answer because he just sighed and turned back to Aizawa. I swear, you're going to give me gray hair from worry. But you love me anyways. I really do. Now you two should rest up. If you leave the bed for any reason other than the bathroom, I won't let either of you return to class on Monday. Izuku blinked. Huh? Mike-sensei grinned at him. I can't have you getting into trouble, kiddo. Just stay here and keep my stubborn husband company. Just get out of here so I can start telling Midoriya embarrassing stories about you, Aizawa grumbled. Sho, Mike-sensei whined. Either I tell embarrassing stories or we leave and go pull a vanishing act until Monday. Izuku blinked, wondering why he was being included, but then again, embarrassing stories about Mike-sensei sounded fun. I vote for stories, he stammered out, after gathering up some bravery. Aizawa nodded. We would pull a vanishing act, and I would still tell embarrassing stories. The English teacher gave a dramatic sniff. I see how it is. Fine, I'll leave. He was halfway out the door when he paused. Make sure to tell the little listener about the hair dye incident in our second year. Aizawa snorted. I will. Now scram. Present Mike chuckled and walked out. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 6 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 7 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.